The moon is a truly special thing. For some, it embodies love, romance, and that feeling of something so beautiful, one can't hardly describe it. To others, it is a governess, always watching and dictating the destinies of those below. And then there are those who see its mere existence as a challenge to be taken on. They see the moon as a new place, perfectly within sight, but impossibly far away, at least until the impossible is conquered. In the world of Dungeons and Dragons, all of this still remains true, though when you toss magic, gods, and monsters into the mix, the grand symbolism of the moon becomes much less symbolic and entirely more fantastical. Hello and welcome to Monster of the Week, the only show on the internet that asks the question, can an adventuring party make it to the moon? And what might they find there? While that might actually be two questions, the answer is yes. And giants, respectively. That's right, our monster this week is a giant, a moon giant to be precise, on account of the fact that they are giants and they come from the moon. Now, unlike the majority of monsters I cover on this channel, this week's creature is also not from D&D's history, but is indeed from its estranged cousin, Pathfinder. It has been a while since we've talked about a creature from Pathfinder, and as always, my goal here today is to go over everything there is to know about moon giants. I'm talking lore, ecology, and of course some plot hooks and story ideas for how the moon giants might fit in your D&D adventures, as well as provide you with some fresh 5th edition monster stats. Now personally, I love these giants and I think they offer up some really interesting flavor. So if you're prepared to talk about some absolute lunacy, why don't we dive right in? Moon giants appear not dissimilar from other giants we're used to seeing, at least as far as size goes. They stand about 24 feet tall and can weigh up to 18,000 pounds. They're described as having gray or blue skin which reflects light and is covered in tiny pock marks. Get it? 'Cause they're a crater face. Moon puns. Moon giants first appeared in Pathfinder's Bestiary 5, which was released in 2015. But this would be far from their only appearance, as they would get reprinted with literally no change. I mean, after being adopted for Starfinder in September of 2018 as part of the Alien Bestiary published by third-party publisher Legendary Games. For those who are unaware, Starfinder is to Pathfinder as Spelljammer is to Dungeons and Dragons. It's pretty much the same game, but with a nice fresh coat of sci-fi paint over the whole thing. The great thing about this when it comes to both Spelljammer and Starfinder is that if there's a cool monster from the fantasy side of your favorite tabletop game, but you're playing the science fiction setting, because the mechanics are so similar, you can use the monsters pretty much interchangeably. Legendary Games obviously knew that, and so did Paizo, because in October of 2018, literally 1 month after the Legendary Games monster book came out, the official Starfinder Alien Archive 2 was released. And look who made it onto page 62. Unlike the version printed by Legendary Games, however, the new official Moon Giant stats were at least a little bit different mechanically. The sordid history of the Moon Giants publishing aside though, what is it that makes a Moon Giant different from any of the other giants we might see in the Monster Manual, for example? After all, when it comes to giants, the name assigned to them is usually pretty telling. Take fire giants, they're notorious craftsmen and they live in places with lots of fire. Storm giants can hurl lightning bolts, and hill giants live near hills. When we look at the moon giants, it appears that they get their name due to the fact that they have this immense reverence for the moon. They are tremendously gifted both as astronomers and astrologers, and have a rich culture attached to moon worship. They are something of an oxymoron as highly spiritual yet extremely lawful beings. On the one hand, they will debate endlessly to refine their laws and outlook on life, following logic and philosophy to grow as a people, while on the other hand, they are extremely spiritual and emotional, and have tethered themselves to the cosmos. They are capable of casting very powerful magic, most of which is from the divination school, and all of which is powered by their understanding of celestial bodies and their movements. And this act of tethering themselves to the stars has certainly had an impact on the Moon Giants as a society. While each one of them is certainly an individual, they are all affected by the omens of the night sky. Based on the state of the cosmos, their mood and disposition is at the very least going to be slightly impacted. In some cases, this might make them cheery, in others, it could make them despondent. But what you really have to watch out for is the rising of a bad moon in the sky. If you happen to encounter a moon giant during an ill-omened cosmic event, who knows what could happen? Nothing good! So when a moon giant says that they can't hang out because Mercury's in retrograde, believe them. Now, if we want to ascribe a real-world culture to the moon giants as a way to kind of tether ourselves to this fantasy race, the closest thing would seem to be the romanticized idea of ancient Greece, specifically Athens. The moon giants are stalwart philosophers and revel in the chance to debate new ideas with anyone who will converse in good faith. They also have a formal society with well-thought-out laws and established hierarchy, with special positions existing for oracles who are especially in tune with the stars and other cosmic events. As giants, they are of course still incredibly strong, but they don't often choose violence, and in fact they're one of the few giant races that will often welcome adventurers with open arms as visitors. This is likely due to their lawful, neutral, logic-based approach to making rules and living their lives, but it also might have something to do with their innate magical abilities. Moon giants are generally great at all the same stuff other giants are objectively good at. They can smash people for a bunch of damage, and they also have no trouble reaching the top shelf of the pantry. But what truly makes moon giants unique is that connection to the moon and the cosmos above. They have a wide array of spells they can cast every day, most of which have a connection with divination magic. With spells like Commune, Dream, Scrying, and Clairvoyance, they've got pretty much all the tools they need to be effective sages. They also have access to control weather, which isn't likely to be super useful in combat, but is extremely thematic for a creature that is so focused around the moon. Another byproduct of their connection to the stars is their innate ability to see everything, and I don't mean by scrying. Moon giants have true sight, which means they can see through any magical illusions or other arcane bullshittery with ease. This is invaluable when identifying hidden threats, and it's something the moon giants like to keep to themselves for the most part. See, they're the type of combatants who will try to learn everything they can about their opponent before swords are even drawn. And if they can avoid those weapons being drawn in the first place, all the better. But inevitably, from time to time, combat is going to erupt, and when it does, the moon giants have more than a few tricks up their sleeves. As we all know, giants are pretty handy when it comes to chucking boulders. Every single one of them, at least in 5th edition, has a rock-throwing attack, and the moon giant is no exception. In fact, they're arguably the most proficient when it comes to giants chucking stuff around. Rather than simply pitching a boulder like a fastball towards their enemy, they opt to throw boulders up high, letting gravity do some of the work. The result is a massive amount of damage when the thrown rock hits. But it also creates an impact crater, shattering the area within 10 feet and transforming it into difficult terrain. Another feature of the moon giant is this lunar aura, which they are constantly projecting in 60 feet outwards from them at all times. This lunar aura can cause 2 different effects, and the giant can use a bonus action on its turn to swap which effect is currently active. While the aura is waning, it calms all creatures within it in much the same way that the Calm Emotion spell does. Creatures become incapable of taking aggressive actions unless someone hits them first. In the Starfinder version of this monster, this aura also puts those creatures to sleep, which I think is kind of neat, but I preferred the calming effect overall just because I like the idea of a moon giant using this ability to turn a fight into a conversation, or in their case, more likely, a debate. So I opted to just add sleep to the moon giant spell list, since it is still very thematic for it to have that ability, and then we can kind of have the best of both worlds. The second effect of the aura comes into play if it is waxing. In this mode, it enrages all creatures, causing them to do additional damage and essentially gain the benefits and drawbacks of the barbarian's reckless attack feature. A fringe effect of this waxing aura is that it causes all lycanthropes to be forced into their hybrid forms. This may or may not come up, but it's pretty cool when it does. So now that we have a good understanding of what a moon giant is and what it's capable of, let's talk about the many ways we can tell stories with these creatures. Also, don't forget to like the video and leave a comment with your own plot hook ideas. One of the first things we need to address when fitting any new giant into the world of D&D, at least from a general perspective, is the ordning. The ordning is basically the hierarchical structure the giant races use to determine who is in charge and who makes the rules. With storm giants at the top and hill giants at the bottom, there is a direct correlation to how powerful any given giant race is and how far up the proverbial food chain they find their position. Moon giants, however, are not from D&D originally, so their place within the ordning has gone entirely unconsidered up until this point. Mechanically speaking, they are a little bit more powerful than storm giants are, so maybe their true spot within the ordning is at the top, and they are the rightful heirs to the position which the storm giants currently hold. Maybe that spot was taken from them ages ago by a storm giant plot, and they have since been displaced and driven off. Or perhaps the moon giants chose to step aside and allow the Storm King to rule, opting for a more isolated existence, allowing them to focus on their meditations in philosophy. Maybe the moon giants exist in a sort of oracular role, where they are not directly involved with giant politics, but the other giant races visit them for advice and direction in times of great need. Or it's entirely possible that they have a completely separate origin story and they were never part of the ordning to begin with. Maybe their species actually comes from the moon, and on the lunar surface high up above, they developed completely independent from the rest of the giants down here below. In order to explain why any of them are on the planet's surface at all, maybe in an age long past, a group of them opened a magical gateway to explore the lands below, only to become stranded somehow. Eventually, much like all of you watching this have done to my YouTube channel, they subscribed to their fate and chose to simply build out what life they could on the ground below, while their kin up above on the moon just kind of assumed they had died in some magical mishap. This could lead to a really interesting story where the giants are trying to find a way to get back to the moon and reunite with their lost brethren. Another thing I really want you to consider when it comes to giants is that they typically hate dragons. Dragons are one of the few creatures that actually pose a sizable threat to giant society, and they were at war in the past for thousands of years. While open warfare with dragons may no longer be the norm, the memory of both dragons and giants run long, and old grudges are seldom forgiven. While any dragon would surely make a worthy adversary for a group of moon giants, I wonder if there's a specific dragon out there that would make for a thematic and perfect matchup for these creatures. Perhaps some kind of draconic being that also seeks dominion over the moon. Something that... okay, I'm over this bit. I'm talking about moon dragons. I did a video a ways back about moon dragons, so if you want to know more about them, I'll link to it in the pinned comment on this video. But basically, these dragons also draw power from the moon, and they tend to be a lot less chill than our new giant friends here. I can't help but feel like a party getting wrapped up in a war between a city of moon giants and a moon dragon with hundreds of enthralled lycanthrope minions has potential to be an incredible story. And if you want to do that, I've already converted the moon dragon into 5th edition, so you've got all the tools you would need. I also think a moon giant druid would make for an incredible NPC encounter. Just imagine it, this literal giant heading up a druidic circle of the moon. They could provide the party with both wisdom and guidance, as well as a powerful ally who can transform into massive animals. If there's no rule a dog can't play basketball, there's sure as hell no rule that a giant can't be a druid. This is especially cool if you already have a moon druid or even a circle of dreams druid druid in your adventuring party. A moon giant mentor would be a really cool NPC to include in that character's backstory. Something else I do want to touch on here is that I know different D&D worlds have different cosmological cycles and potentially completely different setups and rules altogether. Take Eberron, for example. That world has 12 moons, maybe even 13 depending on who you ask, so that's gotta change up a few things, right? So what I want to do here for this creature is talk about a few setting-specific ideas that definitely can translate between D&D worlds, but also will give you something to jump off of if you happen to be DMing in one of these worlds. As I just mentioned, Eberron has at least 12 moons. How will this affect our moon giants? Well, perhaps in Eberron, with its increased lunar presence, the moon giants are overwhelmingly powerful. They could possess so much power that they have been wary of going completely mad. Perhaps the oldest oracles among them are all just a bit off, as they've spent an entire lifetime being saturated with this bombardment of arcane energy. It's also possible that you have 12 different factions of moon giants with their own politics and stories happening between them. Maybe 2 of the factions go to war, and one day the 4th moon of Eberron just shatters in the sky due to a heinous ritual performed by one of the moon giant clans. It's hard to say exactly how, but I'm sure having 12 moons would be both a bit of a blessing and a curse to our moon giant friends. The 1,634 of you who have watched my Theros lore videos probably already know where I'm going with this, but I think Theros would be an amazing spot to throw in some moon giants. The world of Theros is already extremely Greek in terms of flavor, so like a bit of extra feta in your Greek salad, moon giants are an easy inclusion. Rather than being from the moon, perhaps they are manifest from the Nyx itself, making them beings actually made from stardust and the essence of the cosmos. I imagine they would live atop mountains and build shrines to Crufix, the god of horizons, or maybe even Afara. You knew this was coming. You knew I was going to talk about Spelljammer, because I mean, come on. They live on the moon sometimes. Moon giants make for a really easy inclusion in a setting that already prides itself on weird alien races living on weird alien planets. Pretty much any of the plot ideas I mentioned before will work in a Spelljammer game, but I especially like the idea of including a dire element to their situation the party can help with. Maybe I've just watched too many episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation, but perhaps the moon giants are in crisis mode after realizing that the moon they live on is going to be destroyed by a cosmological event. The party would have a chance to help them either by saving their moon or maybe by convincing them in the form of a debate that it's time to evacuate. However, evacuating a moon giant population is going to be a lot different than evacuating a population of any normal-sized humanoid race. Just logistically, that presents a giant challenge. No pun intended. It was intended. You've been bamboozled. Now, regardless of how, if you do want to use this monster in your D&D campaign, in the description down below you will find a link to a Google stat block which contains everything you need to run this creature at your table, including the stats, of course, and all the fluff and flavor details as well. And if you're one of my lovely patrons, you can of course find the Patreon exclusive stat block over on the Patreon page as my way of saying thanks for the incredible amounts of support. And that brings us to Patron of the Week. This week's randomly selected patron is The Musical Boy 93. Thank you so much for your support. I can feel the bardic inspiration coursing through me. And thank you for watching. I appreciate it immensely, and do not forget that if you have a monster you'd like to see show up on Monster of the Week from a previous edition of D&D or Pathfinder or some other tabletop role-playing game, please leave a comment in the description down below or post it in the Monster Suggestions chat channel thing over on Discord, which is all linked in the description down below as well. Also, definitely let me know what you guys think about this monster. I enjoy going a little bit outside of D&D and exploring some of the cool creatures brought to us by the Pathfinder crew because, you know, gives a little bit of spice, a little diversity, a little spice of life over here. So let me know if you guys are into that, and who knows, we might see more Pathfinder creatures show up on the channel. I mean, I've done them in the past, and I know you guys like them. It's just, you know, it's a little different. a little something different. Anyways, it's 1,000,000 degrees in this room. My skin is nearly melting off of my body, so I'm gonna go take a cold shower while this footage downloads onto my computer. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Until then.